welcome back to The Short Game. This is the show where we talk about short video games, games that respect your time. I'm one of your awesome co-hosts, Reagan Kelly. I'm with two other awesome co-hosts this week. Nate Heininger, how are you doing, Nate?
I'm doing well, and this newfound opening enthusiasm that you have is just makes me giggle every time. It's great.
Oh, you know, I try. And I gotta keep up the enthusiasm in the dark, bleak hellscape of the game that we're talking about today. Laura
true.
Nash, how are you doing today, Laura?
I am definitely not possessed by Satan.
Neither am
That I
I.
know of.
It's good to clarify. Early and often.
And this week we are talking about Pony Island, a game with a really cheerful-sounding title that hides a dark secret that's not even really that much of a secret, but lots of cool little surprises.
And the secret is not that the ponies actually look like unicorn triceratops.
That's a good point. They do kind of, actually.
Not a secret. That's just in the game art.
I never thought about that. You are absolutely right.
So Pony Island, initially it seems as if you are playing a very cutesy, arcade-style, endless runner game. But that pretense drops away almost immediately, to the point where really, if you look at even the most minimal marketing for this game, the surprise of this game is not, oh, hey, guess what? This isn't a cute endless runner starring ponies. The developer describes it as a suspense puzzle game in disguise. You are in limbo, trapped in a malevolent and malfunctioning arcade machine designed by the devil himself. It is not a game about ponies. So right up front, this game is telling you that there's hidden stuff. This is a game with multiple levels. Wikipedia calls this a metatextual game. So this is a game where you are trying to investigate sort of the world around the game that you're experiencing. You know, you're playing a game, but there are things happening that are more expansive than just the game itself. You're trying to explore the world around it.
The game itself is played on like where you see the screen of the game that you're playing on. Like there's always a border around the edge of your screen showing the border of the screen that you're playing like Pony Island on. Like out of the gates, the view is not just the game, but actually like what the world that you're sitting in while you're playing the game.
And even the first thing you see is a broken start menu, and you have to go in the options menu and choose fix start menu. So it's kind of, someone described this at Rock, Paper, Shotgun as a game that doesn't seem to want you to play it. And I think that's true for the beginning, but then it's a game that doesn't want you to stop playing it. And it's very much part of the narrative. Like it's an odd game that feels very open while it's very much on rails.
This got a lot of buzz in early 2016. I mean, actually, it came out in early 2016, although it was based on I think, 2014 Ludum Dare game. But it got a whole lot of buzz when it came out, based on essentially zero marketing. It had just sort of kind of exploded onto Steam, and I started seeing a lot of people reviewing it or talking about it, and almost everything that I read about it sort of prefaced it with, this game is only $5 on Steam, and if I tell you almost anything interesting about it, it'll spoil some of its unique charm. So really, just go play it and try it out, and come back and meet me here, and we'll talk about it for the rest of the review, right? And I kind of took that at its word. I didn't read very much about this game when it first came out, but that kind of had the maybe unintended consequence of making me think like, well, I'll get around to playing this eventually, right? I don't want to play it right this minute. But I also don't want to read literally anything about it for fear of being spoiled. And so it kind of fell off my radar before it ever had a chance to kind of get in there.
It's hard sometimes with mystery games of knowing whether it's going to appeal to you. And I think this game, in some ways, was very careful to say, there's a twist, but you didn't know if the twist was going to be something that was antithetical to the type of games you like playing. Whereas we love games about games. If someone had said Pony Island is a game that's very meta, there's a lot of games about games bits in there, I think we would have been on it day one. But since everyone was saying it's a very secretive thing, you can't tell anybody about what the plot twists are, we all kind of let it skim by. And it's a little bit of a shame because I think this definitely could have been in our 100th episode list of, 4 or 5 games about games. This is right up there. It's the same type of thing. Although people might not jump to that conclusion right away.
Yeah, and I know for me, like, the kind of humor or, like, the aesthetic around it, the whole, like, it's a game made by, Satan, and it's, like, kind of, like, it's so edgy, or, like, the
So punk.
Oh, yeah.
like, that concept can be very off-putting, because we're almost, like, tired of it. And to be honest, at the beginning of this game, that's kind of how I felt. I was like, oh man, like another, like, this is, like, I get it, like, oh,
yeah,
like,
it felt very like consciously edgy, right? At the start, you think like, oh yeah, I'm gonna face off against Satan in this haunted arcade game, and that at first can seem cool, but it's
like, oh, but it's ponies.
It felt a little Hot Topic-y.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. But
people I trusted said it was clever, and I think that helped me push past the initial trolling of the game. The game trolls you, let's be honest.
Yeah, this is a game full of little surprises that are all intended to kind of subvert your expectations and in subtle or very obvious ways kind of troll you and make you second guess the game or make you feel a little bit dumb, but in a way that continues to propel you through it, not in a way that really put me off, at least.
By the end of the game, I do believe that beginning part of the feels like a Hot Topic, like, this would be right up that alley, was also a choice. And once you kind of get past it, you recognize the whole thing is like a total package, and they wanted you to kind of feel that way a little bit at the beginning. And ultimately, I thought they executed it really well. But it took a little while for me to get into the game.
I'm curious if I didn't know there was a twist coming, if I would have kept playing. I think some of the, hack the game stuff early on is really intriguing, but I don't think that the game front ends its most interesting pieces. I think that you get a lot of the really unique gameplay 45 minutes plus in. And for a 2.5-hour game, that's a lot.
That's true. I think what's really interesting about it is that, like, it's not one twist. Like, you get the sense from the description right off the bat. This is a game where it's like, oh, there's a twist. And it seems like the twist is obvious. It seems like the twist is, I'm stuck in a video game designed by Satan. But wait, no, actually, that's not the twist. That is in the Steam description. You are playing a game written by Satan. So the twists are tons of little ways that the game just subtly or really consciously surprises you. It's got a ton of interesting twists that happen every few minutes. This game never spends more than 5 minutes doing the same thing. It certainly has sort of things it continues doing again and again in new ways, but we'll talk about some of its sort of overall game modes, I guess. But it's constantly surprising you with new stuff.
Yeah, I never really felt like there was a twist in this game. I never went like, oh shit, like, I did not see that coming. It felt like it was just a game that kept, like, digging deeper into its own sort of world that it was creating. Every step was a progression of the things that it had done before, and where you end up is way different than where you began, but it's like a bunch of just series of turns instead of like a dramatic twist.
It's not really about like surprising revelations about the player or character or, setting in the game. It's more about little fascinating, surprising gameplay revelations that are just like every few minutes I just had to, like, something would happen and I would think I was stuck, and then I would suddenly discover something that made me chuckle and think, man, that was clever. This game is constantly doing things that are just like, wow, that was really clever, really interesting.
So something it does that I am trained to hate in work environment is there's a thing called mystery meat navigation, or like, it's when you don't know what to click on next and you're just kind of stuck looking at the screen and clicking on random shit to see what happens. This game does it, and I found it charming, and it is breaking my brain that I like that, because I'm trained to react with disgust in my normal life to that. And yet this game made me kind of revel in the fact that I often got stuck, and I was pretty sure if I just kind of wandered around and clicked, I'd find something unexpected. It doesn't sound good, but it's good.
There's a certain joy in breaking a game. I mean, you can watch, AGDQ is going on right now, and you can see these incredibly skilled people breaking video games, and that's essentially all they're doing. And this is a game that you don't have to be good at this game to break it. This game is all about breaking the game. And this is a game about playing a broken game. You're playing a badly programmed game by really, you almost feel bad for Satan, because he's this hapless programmer who's tried to put together a good game, and you're constantly a good game that will trap you for all eternity, and you're constantly escaping from it by finding the crappy patched over code or bad interface elements or other weird broken stuff in the game and exploiting that to escape from his world that he's designed for you. And that's fun. Like, there's nothing more fun than breaking a game. Like, you always remember that first time when you were playing an action RPG, and you realize that you could somehow, through some combination of things, level up your character's jump stat to the point where you could leap over tall buildings or something like that.
That Rosebud code in The Sims that gave you infinite money.
Or I remember very clearly playing GoldenEye 64, me and a friend of mine, and we figured out that you remember those like big boxes? They looked like steel crates, and you could shoot them and they'd blow up and they just leave like a half shell of that crate. Mm-hmm. Well, you could throw a proximity mine or like a remote mine into that shell, and then the box would respawn through like a normal timer. And now the mine was inside of that box where no player could see it, but the proximity aspect of it still worked. So you could set all these like super secret mines or do remote mines, and then you invite your friends over to play, and you spend the entire match trying to set up that exact situation where you've blown up a box, put a mine in it, the box is reformed, and then your friend walks by and blows up and has no idea what's happened. And when it works, it is the most satisfying thing. We would only pick the scientist characters when we were doing stuff like this, as if we were like scientists in the game, and try to come up with like stupid ways to break them. So I know exactly what you mean, and that's not even really breaking a game. Like, no,
yeah, you're playing entirely by the rules there. You're just playing by broken rules, and
but
that's a great thing.
It feels like it.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's a great feeling in a video game. That sort of I've figured out the rules, and I know the rules now better than the program knows the rules, and I'm going to do something that you never thought of. And this game is all about setting up that feeling again and again and again and again. And of course, the programmer, the creator of the game, Daniel Mullins, has thought all of this stuff out. This is a pretty on-rails scripted experience, but it's a consistently surprising scripted experience. So I really, really liked that about it.
Yeah, and you were saying like it's often very funny. There's like no moment in this game that I was like, out loud, like cracking up, but there was probably 100 times where I went like, huh, like, oh man, that was, I didn't see that coming. Or just like little moments, like rapid fire, little jokes that kind of hit you and you just move on to something else.
And I love how this game feels like it makes sense when you're in the moment, but when someone else passes by and you're playing it, it looks like you've stepped into some weird time warp nightmare land.
Oh, yeah.
And like every time Justin passed my computer screen and looked at it, it looked like I was playing, one, a different game, and two, playing it very badly. So I think that it's really fun if you like going through a lot of different emotions and a lot of different gameplay modes, some of which we'll talk about during the spoiler break.
Yeah, it's like a WarioWare with a plot in some ways. I mean, not quite that much, but like it's constantly changing up things on you.
Yeah, I was thinking it really, really felt both in controls and gameplay when you're actually like playing the kind of mini games that we'll talk about. It felt like the stuff we would play back on like addictinggames.com or like E-Bombs, or like Newgrounds, like the Flash games. It felt like series of those, and then you would finish the little challenge, and then you would jump into the like Satan aspect of the game and like kind of the back end of it.
Something I wanted to mention just while we're talking about the game in generalities is that this really reminds me of, I think it's got to have been kind of an influence on it, that urban legend about the game Polybius. Is that something you guys are familiar with? Have you heard that urban legend?
No.
It's one of my favorite like urban legends, right? And the idea is that sometime back in the 70s, in the early days of the arcades, there was a video game that came out in arcades called Polybius. And that Polybius was a game that had weird psychological effects on players. So that, like, you know, you'd go to an arcade and you'd start putting quarters into Polybius, and it wasn't just like the anecdotal like Pac-Man fever. This was a game that literally drove players insane. That players would have amnesia, or they would have they would break into cold sweats while playing it, that some of the players disappeared and never came back, and that then the game was immediately, very shortly, removed from arcades by, you know, government trucks and never seen again. And that there's all, you know, rumors of, well, some guy in California still has a ROM image of the game, or that, you know, so-and-so has like documentation that it existed. And it's one of these sort of early message board rumors. And it's just one of those things that I really love, that concept. I love this sort of like almost like Cthulhu mythos meets you know, Pac-Man kind of vibe to it. I really, really like that story, even though there's no evidence that it's real, of course, because it's ridiculous.
Well, yeah.
I mean, to me, it reminded me of the Are You Afraid of the Dark episode, The Tale of the Pinball Wizard.
I don't think I've seen that one. What happens to the Pinball Wizard?
He plays the game and gets trapped within it, and he has to find the king and crown him. Like, the plot of the pinball game, as loose as it is what he has to live out, because he is trapped within the pinball game and must solve all the riddles therein so he can escape.
Do you think it's coincidence that twice now we individually have referenced like 90s stuff from this game?
Oh, I mean, no, not at all.
It's kind of what a lot of it feels.
Yeah, this is
like.
Absolutely like, I mean, you just have to look at the graphics for a moment and realize like this. I'd say graphically, the thing I can say it looks closest to would be like a ZX Spectrum game. But that's a bit of a deep cut. Like, it looks like an early 80s game that you might play on a personal computer. So like,
it looked like stuff I'd play on like a black and white Mac.
Yeah, or like an Apple II even. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very sort of lo-fi. Obviously, we've been talking about its sort of setup, but you know, your setup is you're playing an arcade game. Maybe we should talk about the first moment. We briefly mentioned it, but like when you first open up this game, you get a title screen that looks like a very cutesy Pony Island game, and then you hit like start game, and you see a kind of a flickering CRT start up, and now you're sitting in front of the Pony Island arcade machine. And you can't look around, you're trapped looking directly at the screen. And when you go to click on start, nothing works. And then you go into the options screen, and you have to figure out how to start the game. The options screen has some kind of weird options in it, but when you try to click on them, they start literally falling off of the screen, revealing an advanced options thing. But you can't click on that without kind of assembling some of the parts of the broken interface into the words advanced options. Then you can click on that, and one of the options there is to fix the start menu. So you actually have this sort of multi-layered puzzle. Oh, and then when you click to fix the start menu, it takes you into your first example of the little code puzzles that we'll probably be talking about in a moment, where you see what looks like the code of the game. Obviously, it's pseudocode, but you're dragging around little blocks of code to try to get the game to let you start it at all. And so it's this really, like, very brief explanation of what the game is all about. You are playing something broken. You have to fix it. The game doesn't want you to play it, or alternately, it doesn't want you to escape, but there's something about this game that's always broken, and it's your job to not just fix it and make it work, but fix it in hacky, bizarre ways to make it work.
It wants you to play Pony Island. It doesn't want you to do anything else on the computer or on the game.
Yeah.
But you, as the player, along with a friend, find out a lot more about this game and this machine, and what you can do. But after getting through this first little puzzle that Reagan was describing, you get into your first run of playing Pony Island, and it's not an endless runner, but it is an what's it called, automatic runner. Where your pony is moving left to right. At this point, it's like the kind of like black and white screen, and you click left on your mouse to jump, and little fences are going to come, and you jump over the fences, and once you've got to the end without running into a fence, you get a big flagpole, like a Mario flag, and you beat the level.
And it's at this point that we should caution that at the beginning of this game, it says, do not try to play this with a trackpad. I will say, do not try to play this with a trackpad. I actually Amazon Prime Now'd a mouse because this game cannot be played without both a left and right mouse button. And you can press the space bar. It's just really, really tough. And it gets increasingly harder. You really need that mouse to play. Or
if you're like me and you're on like your trackpad and you're like, no, I'm as good at single clicking as I am at two finger clicking, so I can do both. Like I never I can do this, I promise, within like 30 seconds of try. I'm like, this is literally impossible without a
I played Guacamelee with a trackpad, and I needed to get a mouse for this.
It's impossible.
We should drop a spoiler break here in a moment, and actually, in a weird way, the reason that you can't play this with a trackpad, the specific reason, is almost a spoiler. So
it is.
We will say, like, you absolutely need a 2-button mouse to play this game. I played it on the Mac version, which worked fine. There's a little quirk that I ran into that we'll talk about, I suppose, in a little bit. But works fine, but you need a 2-button mouse for this game. I also hear that it works fine with the Steam controller, if you've got one of those. But other than that, I don't think you're probably going to want to play this with anything other than a 2-button mouse.
If you are listening to this on time, Pony Island is part of the overwhelmingly positive Humble Bundle right now, and that is games that are overwhelmingly positively rated on Steam. Like there's something like an 85% or 95% or something positive rating. So people really love this game, and as a result, you can get it as a part of a bundle right now. Pay what you want.
This is actually a really good bundle. I know it's a bit of a sidetrack, and for folks who are listening after this bundle has already closed, it may be a bit lame, but there are some really good games in this bundle, so I just want to call out a couple of them specifically while we're on. Pay what you want is this game, Pony Island, something I've never played, Epic Fantasy Battle 4, don't know what that is, and Shantae and the Pirate's Curse, which is my favorite game from the Shantae series, a series I have a lot of affection for. Really fun sort of Metroidvania. The Beat the Average section includes Day of the Tentacle Remastered, which is amazing, and the pay $10 or more option includes the basically brand new PC port of N++. N++ was a PS4 exclusive for its first year. It's now out on Steam. If you didn't grab it on PS4 or couldn't, maybe you didn't have a PS4, it is one of the best examples of a totally stripped down, amazing platformer that you will ever play. It's so worth trying. So
it's fantastic.
And it's worth $10, no questions asked. So this is a great bundle if you haven't gotten it yet and it's still running when you hear this.
Yeah, otherwise, if you are listening after that bundle is over, Pony Island is worth it on its own. It is $5. So you should totally pick it up. And before we hit the spoiler break, I did want to just shout out to the music for this game, which was it was fun. It's interesting. There's some little funky tunes in there too that I loved. It's just a great job with it. We don't have to spend too much time talking about it because I'm assuming it's been playing through this episode. But it added. It was for a game that was so stripped down. Like they definitely broke the rules a little bit on what you could do with music for a game that you would expect from that time, if that makes sense. It was a little bit more complex. It was nice.
So here it is, your spoiler break.
So this game is weird.
Very weird. I think we probably should talk about the different modes or gameplay styles that this game has. I don't feel like we really need to go into a whole lot of detail about the story, which is, kind of interesting. There's things to discover there, but there's a few main modes that you'll be playing in, and then each of those has a bunch of cool surprises within it. And the main thing that we've talked about so far is the arcade game, Pony Island itself. Weirdly enough, I actually really enjoyed playing the endless runner or like auto runner portions of the game. Like, it starts off seeming incredibly bare bones and simple, but it continues to layer on interesting stuff every time. You play a lot of Pony Island in Pony Island, but I never really got bored with it. I occasionally got a little frustrated, but never even that much. It's a fun little auto runner.
Yeah, I had a problem with one level, but I'll talk about that later. But I did too. It was fun. I was surprised at how fun it was to just left click to jump. And then what we were hiding behind the spoiler break is the fact that the Pony Island itself gets more and more complex as you add new skills to your pony, including wings and a giant laser gun.
The laser, I think, was the first real exciting discovery or thing that you feel like you're, oh man, I'm really breaking out of this thing now. Fairly early in the game, you discover somewhere in the options menu. I forget exactly how you got to it now, but you discover somewhere in the options menu a kind of a shrine with little beautiful figures all pointing at a beautiful checkbox that says "Enable Pony Lasers." And you go to
salvation mode.
Oh yeah. And you try to click on that box, and the option or the whole screen shrinks and dodges away from your mouse. And you try to click it again, it shrinks again and dodges away from your mouse. And Satan taunts you with some text saying, you can't enable that option, I won't allow it. But then you get the option to go into the code of the game and make that text box get bigger again until you can click on it yourself. You do some increasingly difficult puzzles, and your payoff for getting those puzzles is now your pony can shoot lasers. And that really expands the game and makes the auto running part actually kind of fun. It's still a little simple, but it's kind of fun.
It is fun. It's just the right amount of challenge. I mean, the things that are coming is now not only are you jumping over little fences, you are fighting off butterflies, and they come.
Well, at first they're little devil heads, right? They're little Satan faces.
They become butterflies much later.
Yeah,
that's fair. That part's seared into my brain. Yeah, so they are little heads, and you they're coming in at different angles, and this is where the mouse is required because at least the biggest one is that they will come at you and they will circle you. And what you have to do is, with the right mouse button, hold right mouse to shoot your laser, which has a timer on it. You can't just hold down the laser. And then sweep a full circle around and knock off all of these bad guys, while also often having to still jump over fences. And it's impossible without two separate buttons.
Yeah, the thing is, the trackpads, or at least Mac trackpads, there is literally no way to both left click and right click at the same time. It's just not possible. And that's really the reason you can't play it on a trackpad. Probably applies to PC trackpads as well. I don't know if that applies to every kind of trackpad, but unless you are able to simultaneously left click and right click and do it, on command, not something wacky, because this is
and alternating. Because what you can do with a trackpad is you can click to jump and then right click right after it and do the sweep. So I was able to do it sometimes, but what you can't do is jump and then hold down the laser and then jump again if you need to. Yeah, and that's where it gets particularly difficult, especially later on, as the things that you're trying to fight come at you in different angles and at different rates of speed, or require precision shots while also jumping.
And this game never really gets that hard. I mean, apart from that one little quirk if you're trying to play on a trackpad, which obviously don't. But if it never really gets all that hard, either with the action sequences or with there are certainly some places where I died repeatedly, but it jumps you right back in, and it's not about being hard. Even the puzzles are never really long-term stumpers. This game is about, consistently surprising you and not stymieing you with difficulty. But there are some times where the game gets, pretty tough.
I also just want to say too that like we've mentioned the trackpad thing like 5 times, but that's just because how a lot of us play.
Yeah.
This is no criticism on the game. Like they say right out of the gates, like you should use a mouse, and that's a totally legitimate thing for a game to request of its players. I mean, it wasn't even that long ago where that's the only way you would play a computer game. So
yeah, absolutely. It seems on the face of it like a point and click, and that issue doesn't come up until at least 15 or 20 minutes in. And so it's something that could catch you by surprise if you didn't know. You could sit down, oh, great, this is great, I can play on my trackpad, and then no, you can't.
Yeah, we're just used to seeing discouragement of trackpads and then ignoring them because we think we're better than it.
Yeah.
Like, let's be real. Again, like, I walked in saying, well, I beat Guacamelee on a trackpad. No, get him. Use a mouse.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and it doesn't have to be a good mouse. Like I use this crappy little Bluetooth Microsoft notebook mouse that I, picked up for some audio editing thing and use like once a year, and it's a piece of junk, but it works fine for this. This is not a
I've got a
super high
Dynex
precision thing.
You know what Dynex is? Dynex is the in-house Best Buy brand.
Oh. High quality stuff, I'm sure.
Classy.
So yeah, it's not a high precision thing. You can do it with any mouse, but you do need 2 buttons.
Yeah, so we're a half hour in, and we've talked about devils and getting trapped in the video game. We haven't talked about the other souls that are trapped within the game, especially those that talk to you as little friends, little helpful code hacking friends.
Yeah. One of the first things that you do once you kind of start breaking out of the game, so to speak, is you get to a desktop interface. And the desktop, you're kind of seeing the system that this demented game is running on, the system that Satan is using to control you, is just a crappy 1980s or maybe early 90s black and white computer with a desktop full of broken-looking icons. But one of the ones that works is a little messenger interface, and you can chat with 2 characters. There's really 2 other characters in this game, unless you count some of the really minor things. There's Satan himself, who has a really elite screen name that reads as Lucifer, but has a lot of numbers and characters in it. And there's the what do they call him again? The lost soul,
hopeless soul.
The hopeless.
I think
soul.
it's hopeless.
Hopeless soul. Yeah.
Yeah. And the hopeless soul is your guide in escaping from Lucifer. He has figured out some stuff, but he needs your help to shut down the system and break the game and escape.
Poor little dude. And that guy basically messages you back and forth. There's 2 people talking to you the whole time. There's the hopeless soul, and then there's the devil. And luckily, the game color codes their messages so you know who's talking to you. And I say that kind of facetiously, but honestly, it's really helpful that they're coded differently because there's a lot of kind of chatting back and forth, and they don't have to have like a little animated character. They just kind of show blue text for one and red text for the other. And it's really clear who's yelling at you at what time.
Mm-hmm. So once you break out into the desktop, and there's a few cool things you can discover there. There's a lot of little hidden stuff in the desktop interface. For example, like there's some little mini games that you can run at various points from the desktop interface. You can try a little very minimal shooter called Pony Galaxy, or there's some walkthrough text. You get the sense that like this is the interface that the devil used to create the Pony Island game, and there's some stuff in there that's like old crappy versions of it.
Yeah, just different attempts at creating Pony Island before landing on the runner. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, and at one desktop, you get to play a game called Settlers of Satan, like Satan.
I think I might have missed that one. What was that one?
I did too. I saw it on the list here, and I was so bummed.
If you open it up, it's just if you log into the devil's desktop, there's that game. And if you play it, it's a little settlers simulation. And if you manage to play until you get all of your resources at 666, you get a ticket.
Nice.
Oh, funny.
It is delightful. I completely stumbled into it. It was lovely. I just was playing this game and trying to figure out what the purpose was. And then 666 showed up, it blinked red, and a ticket showed up. And
that's great.
Floored.
Yeah, we didn't mention the tickets. There's a kind of a collectible in the game that's there to hint at various secrets. And there's like 40 something tickets that you can collect. They're truth tickets. And essentially they are like a collectible that if you really go out of your way to try to find every nook and cranny in this game, a lot of them have these tickets hidden in them. And there is a secret ending that you can get by getting all of the tickets. I didn't really go for that. And I was pretty satisfied with the base ending, but if you are the sort of person who wants to 100% the game, there is this sort of additional layer that requires multiple playthroughs, I think, and requires like a really in-depth attention to detail and willingness to try all kinds of bizarre things in order to get the tickets. I got probably 10 tickets of the 40-some while I was on my way through the game.
There's also a lot of tickets that are acquired by finding the free ticket button that is often just in the options menu. You go to options, there's like anti-aliasing, graphics settings, free ticket,
yep,
back.
So we haven't talked very much yet. I mean, there's obviously a lot of little cool things in the desktop mode, but part of sort of the desktop mode are the code puzzles. There's a lot of moments in the game where you need to break something. I need to make the start button work. I need to, turn off the paths on the map in adventure mode. There's all sorts of different ways that you need to break the game. And in most cases, you do it by going through a portal. Your helpful, hopeless soul usually places portals for you in various places in the game that you can find and click on, and they take you into the code of the game, the sort of underlying logic behind the game. And it's not really quite like Human Resource Machine or anything like that. Like, this isn't real code. It's this sort of like creepy-looking pseudo-code, but mostly the puzzles are almost sort of Lemmings-like. You have a little code pointer that's represented by a key that kind of shows where the computer is in stepping through the logic of the code, and you have little blocks that are just arrows that point that code pointer to different places in the code. So you might have a kind of a loop back that says, okay, go from here to way up here, or you might have an arrow that says change column, and ultimately you just need to get the little code pointer to follow your arrows in a particular place.
Yeah, and it gets increasingly difficult. I think Human Resource Machine, though, is probably the most similar feeling experience that I've had for a while with this. Like, Human Resource Machine, considerably more complicated and more like math-oriented. But you are setting up, like, what's the best path for this? What's the most efficient path?
Yeah.
Some, like, resets and things like that where you're getting your key to go through a loop before breaking it from the loop to complete a certain task.
I would compare it even more to something like Lemmings than to that, because like essentially you're just setting up little blocks that say go here, go here, go here. Like if you've played a game like Lemmings, then you have an idea of what you're doing here. You're setting up little signposts that say go from here to here. And interestingly, you can move those little blocks around as the code runs. So sometimes your solutions, in fact, pretty early on, your solutions start having to be, you don't just set up a system and watch it go like you might with something like Human Resource Machine. You have to break that code as it runs and move things around as they're happening in order to get things to happen.
Yeah, there's a split command, there's jump command. So something like Human Resource Machine, you're actually doing something very similar to real code. This is using things that are inspired by code, but you definitely don't need a grasp of coding concepts. You just need to understand, like, if I put this symbol here, it'll jump to this spot. That's about as far as you need to go. It's not as interested in teaching you coding concepts as Human Resource Machine.
Not at all, really. And in essence, you're not really building code like something like Human Resource Machine. You are breaking code. You are putting in things that stop the code from doing what it's supposed to do. It's really actually a surprisingly fun puzzle game. What I think is really smart about it, what the developer has done really, really well here, is that like these are really basic puzzle mechanics, but he's consistently adding new things to it and never spends very long on a single set of ideas. So, you might have, I don't know, there are really only maybe 40 or 50 of these puzzles through the whole game, and almost any one of them maybe takes 1 to 3 minutes to solve. They're not long, they move at a brisk pace. If you get stuck, you'll find yourself getting unstuck really quickly. But it's constantly adding new clever twists, new types of little blocks, new arrangements of things, that it never becomes boring. And it's really smart about like keeping the duration of the, like it's really smart about not repeating itself, keeping this stuff moving quickly, and never really putting up a roadblock. Never a puzzle that I was never stopped by the puzzles. I always felt like I was moving forward.
No, they could usually be a little bit of trial and error. You know, you could just kind of get it running, see how it behaves, and yeah, usually get it figured out. I did appreciate. I thought some of them were even they were never truly difficult, and I did think that they were pretty fun. And some of them were clever in and of themselves. They would establish like little goals within the puzzle, like there'd be variables on the side that say like x equals 3 and y equals -3, and in the path of the little key that you're moving around will be a little thing that says like x +1 and then x -1, and you have to meet certain requirements by having the key pass over this variable change, a certain amount of times before it would be able to get through a certain goalpost. And it required like a next level beyond just like which way does this key go sort of puzzle solving. It's like which way does this key go and how do I get it back to that button without it like ending? How do I loop it? And then how do I break the loop once I've succeeded in that goal?
Yeah. Sometimes talking about puzzles is a little bit like the old adage of dancing about architecture. It's a little bit hard to explain, and really the joy of puzzles is sometimes in the figuring out. So it might be a little hard for us to kind of convey what is good about these puzzles, apart from to say that they never, like, I don't always like puzzle games, and I sometimes find myself getting too frustrated. I'm the sort of person who, like, Laura, you're a puzzle person. You may have found you solve puzzles far faster and with a lot more alacrity than I do.
And gusto.
There's a lot of gusto.
So I find myself getting really stymied by puzzles a lot. Like, puzzle games, often I respect and think they're cool, and very often I get like halfway into them, I get stuck, and I just lose interest. I never lost interest in this. It always moved at a brisk pace, and I never felt dumb, but I also never felt like I was like steamrolling it. Did you?
I don't think so. I mean, I felt like the puzzles were straightforward, but I thought they were clever at the same time. There's enough jokes in the puzzles that even if you can solve it relatively quickly, while it's looping, you're seeing a lot of jokes in the fake code. Like, this number pass 666? That kind of joke.
Yeah.
Which I always enjoyed. Universally enjoyed.
Yeah, the code itself is really amusing and interesting. So yeah, even if you're steamrolling the puzzles, there's still sort of an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, it's another example of the constant little like, there's like a line in the code that says like, don't go this way. And then like right below it is, a thing that'll like totally botch your string, so not to go that way. And the game's kind of telling you not to go that way. You might accidentally go that way and you're like, damn it even told me not to do that,
I think this game has 20 ideas to every one it needed. And that is a really fun thing in a 2.5-hour game.
Absolutely. And part of that is just sort of all the weird twists and surprises that the game throws at you as you're playing. I mean, this game has it has these sort of boss battles. You're going to be facing off against these daemons. Is that how you pronounce that with regards to computer systems? It's a bit of a pun because they're not demons.
Mailer
they're
daemon.
Daemons,
yeah.
Right? Yeah. So it has these daemons that defend the core files of the system, and your goal is to destroy or delete 3 core files to force the thing to shut down so that you can escape. And each time that you do that, they're these little enemies. They have personality, they have names, and each one of them is full of little surprises and twists as it tries to stop you from deleting the core files that they defend. And every one of those was a delight, but like there's all sorts of little I know we're past the spoiler break, and so hopefully the people who are listening to this have either played the game or fully decided that they don't want to. But I want to talk a little bit about what I thought was the absolute, like, best nugget of this game, which is the Asmodeus battle at the end when you're fighting that last daemon. But again, like, I'm talking about something that is essentially all surprises, and these are things that will be far less interesting if you haven't, you'll be far less interesting if you see them coming. So again, here's a spot where if you haven't, I know we're past the spoiler break, but here's a sort of a double spoiler break. So there are so many little surprises in here, but as the Asmodeus battle was like just a deck full of them. It tells you like to not look away, and then it tells you to type something in, and it absolutely got me because I was not looking at Asmodeus while I was typing. I was looking down at my keyboard or at the text that I was typing in, and I missed an instruction. And
or
it
at
got
the
me.
like fake Steam notifications.
That
Or
was
funny. Yeah, Nate, you were the one. Well, the thing is, I knew that Nate was playing at the same time as I was. And then I saw notifications popping up, and I was like, wait, why is he talking to me here instead of on Slack?
The setup of that is absolutely demented.
It uses your friends. Guys, I have to be honest with you about something. Okay, so if you're listening and you haven't played it yet, what it does is it uses your friends' Steam names to send you fake Steam notifications. Okay, while you're like having these puzzles thrown at you, and you can't read it, or at least the resolution is like so.
Oh no,
bad.
I could read it. I could absolutely read it. So here's the setup for that is that you're talking to Asmodeus, and Asmodeus is asking you to type things in, and each time that he asks you to type something in, it's part of some little demented trick that it's playing on you. But one of them is that he asks you to type something really disgusting and vile. He says, type the worst thing that you can think of. And you do that, and only moments later, you start getting Steam messages. In my case, they were coming from somebody that I knew in high school and have on my Steam list, but I've literally almost never talked to. And so I was like but it's also the sort of person who you're like, I guess it wouldn't be that weird for them to message me through Steam. And they're reading back to you the message that you just the vile thing. Okay, maybe we should ask, what was the vile thing that you guys typed?
I was very topical with mine, and I just wrote golden showers.
Actually, I wrote I love Donald Trump.
Oh my God,
pretty vile.
We both went that route. What'd you write, Laura?
I'm trying to remember. I think I honestly don't remember.
It was too vile for radio.
It was too vile for radio. Well, I actually told a dirtier joke at work today that I will pretend that I typed that in.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I was terrified in that moment that the game or Asmodeus had just sent that to all of my Steam friends, and the notifications
I love Donald
from
Trump
my friend
got
were
sent
like,
to everybody. Oh my God.
Yeah, and this person that I knew in high school is writing a message to me saying, "Oh my God, did your account get hacked? I love Donald Trump? ? LOL." I'm like, oh my God, did it just send that to everyone that I know?
That's so funny. See, for mine, I couldn't get the resolution high enough on my game on my laptop where like small text like that, I couldn't read it. So all I had was what looked like Steam notifications popping up from similar to you, Reagan, not a guy I went to high school with, but like a guy I kind of know that like we kind of played games together, and like, but I haven't talked to him in a couple years. And like, well, that's a funny time for him to, ping me on Steam, but okay, like whatever. And so I spent like 5 minutes because I couldn't read it. So I didn't know that it was like text from the game. Mm-hmm. I spent like 5 minutes trying to find my Google or my Steam chat, like, because I found the person who pinged me, and I opened up the chat log in the friend history, and there was nothing there. And I'm like, well, how do I see history? So I literally Googled seeing Steam history chat, and I feel so, but I'm not afraid to tell this on the show but I felt so stupid when after like I Googled that, I started reading, I'm like, wait a second. And then got me. Yeah, and I had to like replay the that like little moment in the puzzle, and I put the game into not full screen.
Mm-hmm.
And then the notification showed up in my little window of the game. I'm like, holy shit, I have not been tricked like that. It's like Undertale, kind of pull some things like that on you. And I think there's some inspiration for this game from Undertale for sure. And I have not been tricked that hard by a game. Ever, I think. Like Undertale, I was like, oh, that was clever. I didn't know a game could do that. This, I was like, oh, let me get this game out of my way. There's something else going on. And then it turns out to be the game messing with
yeah.
On Slack, you were telling everybody, like you were telling people you were having trouble with the game, and then I see Steam messages coming up, and I was like, Nate, I can already talk to you on another platform. I'm in the middle of something.
I love that it was coming
because I couldn't see the messages. I just couldn't see what it said, so I kept seeing your Steam ID, and I was like, "What the hell, Nate? Like, I'm already getting Slack notifications." I was like, "Chill out. I'll help you in a minute."
The terror for me of thinking that I had just sent, this disgusting political stance to everyone I know on Steam was the true horror of the Pony Island. I was really mortified. I was worried, like, okay, how many of the things that I've been typing in here have been going out, and
that's
what else?
So effective.
If it can send text to my friends, what else might it be sending? Like stuff that I'm not typing in? Could it be sending something else? Oh my god, I was terrified for about a minute.
It's like you're like, I gotta delete all the nudies.
Read the terms of service.
Yeah,
I gotta delete all the nude photos from my photo library because this $5 game from Steam is sending them to everyone.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that the other big, I guess, gotcha of the Asmodeus battle came after that one, because it had more of a tell. I was playing on a Mac. And not long after that incident with the Steam notifications that look exactly like, fortunately, I guess, Steam notifications look identical on all platforms. But the game crashes, but it crashed with a Windows crash message. So that was pretty obvious that it wasn't factual, right? It was still very impressive and cool, but in a way I was kind of bummed that they hadn't like localized that screen for the Mac, right? Like I know what a Windows crash message looks like versus a Mac one. That's a bit of a letdown in my opinion, and I think that the developer ought to go back and obviously, the Mac market is fairly small on Steam, but that's like a really cool element, and come on guys, like you can do that. Give it a different graphic for the Mac crash.
Yeah.
Well, Steam still tells us to create a desktop shortcut every time we install a game. So.
Oh my god, it says start menu shortcut. I saw that like a week ago.
Yeah, a start menu shortcut. Yeah.
How long has Steam been on the Mac, and they still give you the option to create a start menu shortcut?
Start menu. Yeah.
Ridiculous. And it says C drive in some of the settings. Ridiculous.
Anyway, well, we'll do another podcast where we really take Steam to task. But
yeah, and those are just some of the examples of ways that this game surprises you in ways that are, I mean, those are like clear, like fourth wall breaking kind of stuff, but like it wasn't limited to that. If it had just been that, I would have thought, well, this is a clever gimmick, but not a cool game. It's a collection of weird gimmicks. But it was the way in which those were used in the context of a game that I actually found surprisingly fun. I really liked
and those were like you said, that's within the last like 20, 25 minutes of the game is when this stuff starts happening. And I think that's what made it so effective. It's like they had done nothing to pretend to be like your computer or anything like that up until that point. There's a lot of fourth wall breaking in the way that like the Hopeless Soul is talking to you, but the like Steam notifications, that's like totally out of left field. And since, this is a game that you kind of play in one sitting or maybe two, at this point, I've been focused on this game for, 2 hours straight. And so when that stuff starts popping up, I am about as susceptible as you can be at that moment because I'm like into Pony Island. And I see a Steam notification. I'm like, that's weird. And next thing you know, I'm Googling shit, and now we're talking about it.
And I love that, like, actually for the three of us, we all had different freakouts from that. Like, it was different for all of us, and yet every one of us bought it hook, line, and sinker. Like, that was
totally.
very, very cool. So there's lots of little things like that in the game, and obviously we won't mention all of them, but it's full of these little surprises throughout, and I just had a I had a really great time playing it. And it's only 2.5 hours, and it's only $5. I think it's like prime short game territory. Now, I don't necessarily think it's for everybody. Some folks would probably be put off by the aesthetic or the sort of like, I guess, like hot topiciness that we talked about earlier.
Anarchic sensibilities.
Yeah.
The charming satanism.
I think there's probably some people who will play it for the first half hour and say, this is stupid, and stop. And I think that there's probably been a lot of people who will like it if they get past that, because that is how I felt. I was like, this is stupid. But after completing it, well, really after like that first hump, getting over that first like 30 minutes, which is not inherently bad. It's just it's like an aesthetic that I personally don't like.
Same here, really.
So, there's certainly some people who like right out of the gates, this game is great. It's just like for me, and it seems like for you guys, like the first 30 minutes or so, it's not what I really go for. But it does enough to like break past that everything kind of comes together, and you realize that the first half was also a part of that, and the second half wouldn't be as effective if it wasn't for how the first part was handled.
Yeah, it's not an attractive aesthetic, but it is an effective aesthetic at conveying what the game is trying to convey. But you do have to get far enough to understand what the game is trying to convey for it to make any sense at all and not be frankly off-putting.
The third stage you play is the colorful, real look of the game where the pony is like pastel and there's butterflies and it's very lovely. And that only makes sense as a skin placed atop the satanic stuff in the previous levels. A lot of it is building on the things that you might not have liked as much in the beginning, but it feels so satisfying to see the variance later on. There's a part where you play other types of Pony Island, including a text adventure, and you've been jumping over those damn gates for days, it seems like at this point. And it's funny in a 2.5 hour game to complain about that, but you've been jumping gates for a while. And one of the options is a text adventure, and you approach the flagpole like Mario after you've been doing all this, and it says, do you jump, shoot, or do nothing? And you jump, and it says, didn't matter, your neck breaks when it impacts the flag post. It's okay, you are no longer that pony. An explosion of confetti announces your success.
That was so good. Yeah, the text adventure was a great twist. I also really liked Pony Island 3D comes in. You're kind of getting these test versions that Satan has on his desktop of discarded games, and the 3D Pony Island was this like absurd an Endless Runner doesn't work
person.
in 3D.
It's so
You're literally
bad.
just it's the game is full of these great little ideas that never ever overstay their welcome. You play that text adventure for 3 minutes or 2 minutes. You play Pony Island 3D for maybe 1 minute. But these are just clever ideas thrown in just to delight you for one moment, and then you're back to trying to escape from the world.
Yeah, I have to say, when you're talking about the full color Pony Island, I was laughing so hard. Like the music picks up, and like it's so beautifully like cheerful. Now that being said, this is just for me personally. This game actually took me like 4 hours to beat because I have like a lot of like strange eye problems, and something about like pastel colors and fast moving pastel things. It was like impossible for me. I think.
You're colorblind, aren't you?
No, well, kind of. Basically, like a lot of things, and colors can be a problem depending. And so, like the purple on like the green of the butterflies, and it probably took me like 100 times at least to beat this one level, and I was like going crazy, but I finally got past it, and it felt even better. But the game actually started glitching, and it was like the game was like freezing on me, and I was like, this game is like, oh my god, like I was just getting frustrated. I'm like, oh, it's freezing on me. And then I realized, well, it's like, yeah, because it probably didn't expect anyone to take 100 times on this level. So it's not
actually.
Used to, like,
I don't think you're alone on that. I had some levels do that too, and it was pretty frustrating. I think that might have been a Mac port issue. I sometimes get these frame rate problems on the Mac ports of games on Steam, and I don't really blame them. Macs tend to not have the beefiest graphics cards, and the Mac port is like certainly not going to make these developers a lot of money. I appreciate that they put any time into it at all, but I got these frame rate hitches that seemed to happen just as I would jump, and that would kill me because you'd click the button to jump, and the screen would freeze for a quarter of a second or half a second, and in that time, it wouldn't have registered my jump input, and I would have impacted and broken my neck on the gate. Apparently,
that was the exact same issue I had.
Yeah.
But it happened to me a ton because it took me like a million times to beat this level. It was only the one. It was like the first time that it gets really complicated on the color levels, where you have the butterflies that you can't shoot versus the butterflies that you can shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Even the first level where that had Jesus, where after you defeat him, it says real big on the screen, "You killed Jesus," which is always hilarious. That one was fine. It was just like this one level, and I just could not beat it. It was just like I couldn't track what was happening on the screen. And this is just me, but it caused me to have a real roadblock on this game. But I ultimately got through it, and I am glad that I did because the ending is worth it to get through.
Did you saps uninstall the game?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. So it's not really worth it to, I guess, go beat by beat how the game ends. But at the very, very end, I think that you're right. This is worth talking about. The hopeless soul gets on the screen and tells you to uninstall the game. That's the only way to truly free his soul, his or her soul, is to delete the game
from your hard drive. Yeah. This was a bit of a beat right out of Undertale. Not to spoil any ending of that, but yeah, and it still worked on me. I still thought it was cool. It was a little more effective for me in Undertale because of just sort of the heartbreakingness of it. But I connected more emotionally with that game than I think I did with this one.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, but it's still a very clever idea. We finally escaped, but the only way to truly escape from Pony Island is to delete Pony Island. Delete Pony Island now from your hard drive. Delete it now. And of course I did not. I immediately quit it because the game quits for you. Actually, the game exits itself automatically when he begs you to delete the game. But of course I, cruel bastard that I am, immediately booted it back up. And it's, there's not any huge surprises waiting for you if you do that, or at least none that I discovered. It does let you go back. Well, it just started back up, and I could, I guess, start the game over. I didn't go very much farther with it. I was kind of done.
I deleted the game. I was like, all right.
Yeah, Undertale, I was like, I could see myself replaying this. And this one I was like, I got it. And I uninstalled it. It was done.
I had the same thing. I had the same thing. I'm not going to beat this game again. That's no knock on the game by any means. I almost never play a game again. But I was like, okay, I beat it. That was a complete experience. One of the things that we talk a lot about on this show. I felt that I felt great about beating it, and the game literally told me to uninstall it. I said, okay, went into Steam and uninstalled it.
Yep.
I was mostly expecting, because there's multiple locked achievements. I was expecting for one of those to trigger, but it didn't. So I'm
not even sure it's technically possible for an achievement to trigger when you uninstall. But who knows with this game, right?
Who knows? That's what I was thinking.
Maybe it's psyching you out
maybe
somehow.
It does. Yeah.
Maybe they just made a screenshot of your Steam library, and you're still playing the game.
You're stuck. You're still playing it right now.
When a good prank to play on someone is to screenshot their desktop, make that their desktop background, and then delete all their shortcuts.
You heartless bastard.
So glad you're my friend, Nate.
Yeah, we live in different cities. There's no way I can get to your computer, but
or can he?
No, it's just you delete the game and that's it.
That's it. So I guess thanks for joining us on this episode of The Short Game. I guess that's all I've got to say about Pony Island, apart from that I thought it was pretty cool. And I'm kind of sad I slept on it through all of 2016. This came out in January 2016. I had all this time to get it and play it. It seemed right up our alley in a sense, but I let that aesthetic put me off, and I let that first kind of startup experience of it, which is like deliberately kind of off-putting, kind of put me off. And I'm glad that I eventually, gave it a shot. I think you should too.
This game checks a ton of the stuff that we look for in a game, and I agree. I think it was definitely one of the more unique games. When we were talking about like our games of the year of 2016, or like things about the year 2016, like I don't know of any other game that felt like this. This is a very unique game.
We put a Dark Room so high a couple years ago, and it was like that in a way. Like it felt like a subversive in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't put this on the same level as that in a sense, but
no.
I think
I prefer to Dark Room, but it's the same kind of feel.
In a sense, yeah.
In a game marketplace where Firewatch sold 1 million copies. Which is insane, by the way. But yeah, and it's awesome. But that type of experience, which is becoming more and more popular, which is great. We love that. That's one of our favorite types of games. The fact that there's something like this Pony Island, also coming out right around the same time of Firewatch, just shows the depth and the variety of games that are being put out, and often under everyone's radar. I know this game is very highly reviewed by those that have played it, but it's not, at least from what I can tell, a super popular game, and it's awesome. I totally recommend it.
Games contain multitudes.
Yeah, but it's great that they've had success with it, too. They put right in the Steam description that this is as indie as it gets. They list 3 staff: Daniel Mullins, the creator, Simon Jenkins, the consulted designer, and Jonah Senzel, the musician. This is essentially a one-man shop with 2 people helping. And it's great that, it's found success. I mean, I think it's a really neat thing. I see that he has another game coming out later this year in 2017. I don't know much about it. It's called Hex, and I probably don't want to know much about it.
I read a little bit about it, and it is kind of murder mystery. There's a lot of archetypes, something like that. They are all accused of a murder, including, I think, the fourth wall is one of the characters you can play. And you have to figure out... And it's going to have a lot of that stacked games within games. And I read a few descriptions. It's supposed to come out early 2017. So
wow, that's a quick turnaround. 1 year.
It's a year. So he'd been working on it a little bit before he announced, but still, it's a pretty quick turnaround. It's supposed to be a little more about the investigation than anything else.
Well, I'm looking forward to checking that out. So thank you for joining us on this episode of The Short Game, and thank you for sticking with The Short Game into 2017. This is our 3rd year. Well, actually, I guess we are now a 3-year-old podcast. We're beginning our 4th year as a podcast, which is exciting, and we've been really enjoying all of the listener comments and by email and on Twitter, and those are all great ways to get in touch with us. I want to specifically thank one particular listener for 2 reasons. Thank you, Mr. Pac-Man, one of our listeners who has written us a lovely recent iTunes review. We really appreciate those, and they really make a big difference for the show. But he also let me know, when no one else did, that our Overcooked episode, the previous episode, went up with a bad audio editing error in it, where I had the volume of the intro music way up. So if your ears were blasted by that, I apologize. And if you re-download the episode now, it is now fixed. But thank you, Mr. Pac-Man, for alerting me about that, and also for the lovely iTunes review, which we all were very chuffed about.
He also wrote us a great email with a ton of great recommendations. This guy's hitting us on every front, so
yes,
it's awesome. And
he complimented my spreadsheets.
He did.
So be like Mr. Pac-Man, listeners. Drop us a line on our website.
We've received a lot of emails lately from our listeners, and it is the most fun thing that could happen. Please, we love hearing from you guys.
Yeah, especially because at the beginning of the year, it can be really hard to find games that we haven't talked about already, because a lot of the 2016 stuff we were really careful to cover. So we love looking through your emails, seeing what you suggest, checking them out. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. And some of those emails that we've been getting start with phrases like, "Oh, you've probably gotten this recommendation a lot before, but no, we haven't." You know, there's a real serious chance that we missed really cool stuff. If you know about it, let us know. We want to know what you're interested in hearing episodes about or what you think was cool. So absolutely drop us a line. And you can be like Mr. Pac-Man and do that at www.theshortgame.net. We've got a contact form there. You can also find us on Twitter @_shortgame, or we're on Facebook. We don't mention that a lot because I'm not the biggest Facebook guy, but I'm trying to mend my ways. I know a lot of folks are on Facebook. That's their thing. And I want to be there with you and talk about short games. So you can find The Short Game on Facebook. And you can find me also on the internet, mostly on Twitter, excuse me, I have to give the shows one. I'm at Reagan K, that's RayGank. Laura, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Laura J. Nash.
And Nate, where can people find you?
Also on Twitter at NateSTL.
And thank you so much for joining us on this episode of The Short Game.